Okay, this is our second Chalk Talks of the 2022-2023 season. And our guest this evening is Camaury, Washington. And she's a former Texas Tech player, as well as a travel coach, successful businesswoman, and many other things. And that's what, a lot of these Chalk Talks are about, is to engage guests that maybe we don't get an opportunity to, visit that college, or we don't know much about it. Talk to former college players, professional softball players, and just learn more, just about the sport of softball and the recruiting process, and taking advantage of those opportunities for the girls in our program. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go ahead and introduce yourself here. I did kind of take a look at your bio, and just kind of, look things over. But what would you say, when did you start playing softball?
I started playing softball at the age of 10, going on 11. I was actually tricked into it. It was not something that I initially wanted to do. I ran track for the longest time, and I guess my mom was tired of that summer heat, being out there all day, not knowing that softball was going to bring the same type of thing the older that I got. So she actually ended up signing me up at, I believe it was around 10 or 11, to play league ball. And then from there, that's all she wrote.
Yeah. And I can see that, you have a lot of athletes in your family, and that you played 3 sports in high school as well. And your brother, is he currently playing in the NFL, or he has been playing in the NFL?
He did play the NFL. He's been done for 2 years now. He's actually has his own 2 businesses that he's running now. And that is just kind of something that he's been focusing on since he finished, just making that proper transition over from being an athlete all your life to trying to channel that same energy and what the essence of an athlete over into the business world. But he's doing pretty good with that right now.
Yeah, that's great. Good to hear. But yeah, you guys must have been really busy as kids, running around to a lot of sporting events, and parents, chauffeuring you all around.
Absolutely. I was the only girl. Well, I am the only girl. I'll say was, like, I have my younger sibling is actually, he plays football for Prairie View University right now. And he'll be coming out. He has 1 more year to play because he redshirted, but he'll be coming out academically this year. But we were super busy growing up. It wasn't just all sports oriented. We also sang, my oldest brother did. He was in the band as well as an athlete. So there were different things that we did that kind of helped us along that path of being able to, as we get older, convert over from being an athlete to actually coming over into the business aspect of everything.
Who would you say is the biggest impact on you as a softball player, or maybe just in general as an inspirational person?
I would have to chalk that up. It's not anyone famous, but I really admire my older brothers, and of course my mom. But I would have to give it to my older brothers because they led the way. They were both different in their own way, but they're still both to this day very successful. And I watched them growing up and how they handled situations and how they handled different types of adversity. They were the ones I went to and had different conversations with when I was dealing with certain things. And I mean, I really can't pinpoint either one of them, but between those 2 and just having great parents growing up, I would have to say the people that came before me were definitely the people that inspired me to be where I am and who I am today.
That's nice. And then, as I mentioned before, you're a 3-sport athlete in high school, softball, volleyball, and track and field. I know that you were, I read a few different articles about you, probably as one of the fastest athletes in the state of Texas.
Yeah,
in the track and field side. But we encourage, that's something that our softball club does, is that we really encourage all of our girls to play multiple sports, just to use different muscles, take those breaks. We still have our travel that's year round, but we want them to be involved as much as possible, in as many different sports as they can be involved with.
absolutely.
Do you think that that's a big help,
I
looking
think
back
it's
on it?
I think it is the best help you can get, because a lot of my athleticism didn't come from just overnight learning how to be a softball player. It came from a different plethora of things, different movements, and different biomechanics of the body, and learning how to habits that you form in different sports. You never know. Sometimes you may need to use that same thing. Like a lot for me, volleyball and softball really kind of coincided. Me being an outfielder, there when it came to robbing home runs and diving for balls, those were kind of the same mechanics that I use in volleyball, because I was an outside hitter. So knowing how to do an approach and set your feet to jump up, and that all helped me, and it translated over into softball. I know I do have a lot of questions now with people asking, how can we make sure that if we do start our child or athlete younger in a sport, and we're looking for them to carry that on, what is the earliest age? My dad gave me an option leaving the 5th grade, and he told me whatever I wanted to play, I could do it. I could try it out for however long I wanted to. By the 9th grade, I'd honed in on softball. That's initially what I wanted to do, I thought, at least. But I was allowed to be active in all the other sports. So I would encourage also to play in how many sports you want to do, play an instrument, do ballet, draw, write. I used to write a lot when I was in high school and middle school, and going into college. So I always stayed active, because you never know when you're going to need another skill in the thing that you deem yourself to be best at.
Oh, that's great. That's exactly same thing that we kind of reinforce and discuss, with our players and families. So yeah, that's fantastic.
Yes, sir.
So can you kind of give me a little bit of a background on your high school days? Maybe your team's accomplishments and your accomplishments as a player in high school?
So I went to Hightower High School. That's in Missouri City, Fresno, Texas, kind of one of the bigger high schools out here in Texas. Well, in Houston, at least. I'm not going to say we had a championship team that went to playoffs every year, because we didn't. Maybe my sophomore and junior year were our most talented teams. I do believe my sophomore and freshman year, I broke the stolen base record at Hightower. But because we weren't the school to be looked at as far as softball was concerned, there weren't too many huge accomplishments as a high school that came from that, other than it was just high school ball. Travel ball was different, but high school ball, I didn't go to the most competitive high school program that there was in Houston around the time that I was in high school.
Yeah. Well, that's something too that we talk about, because that's, I would say that's similar to a lot of girls that, maybe they're on a smaller team, where there's maybe only one or two, travel ball players on that team, and they're really coming from a travel softball back to their high school, they're probably the best players on their high school teams. Yes. But it's still important that they play with their high schools, I think, and they have that experience, and not play high school ball, because I know that that's something a lot of clubs are now pushing kids, just not to play high school sports and to just play that travel sport.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's really important. I was going to ask you also, so you kind of said that you had it was a different experience from high school to travel
Yes.
for you. So How did travel softball, how was that experience for you?
So I actually didn't start playing travel ball until my sophomore summer. Um, All-star teams were really big when I was playing. If you were on an all-star team, it was almost equivalent as being on a really good travel ball team. And once you were on an all-star team in league, then you'd have your different travel ball teams that would come and ask you to pick up for a weekend. So because I wasn't really sure if I wanted to play softball in college yet, I still just did every sport, but I would go pick up with select teams here and there, or I'd be 14 picking up with the 18U team on the weekend. But I didn't get settled into an actual team of comfort that I liked my sophomore summer going into my junior year. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I played with Freddie Hinojosa, and he was over Sugarland Stealth at the time. And at the time that I had graduated, I was the first or second Division I player to come out of that program. He signed lots of kids, but actually didn't end up getting looked at by the bigger schools because I was a late bloomer in select ball until my junior summer, which was crazy because my second oldest brother that was in the NFL, he was at Texas Tech already. And I had played in a tournament in Beaumont, Texas, and Parrish Junior College came up to me. And again, I didn't know how any of that went. And they talked to me and they were just asking me to be honest. They're like, well, what school do you want to go to? And I'm like, I have no idea. And I was just like, Texas Tech, because my brother was there, but I didn't really know. And maybe about a week later, I found out that Parrish Junior College was a feeder that year for Texas Tech. And I got a phone call 2 weeks later from the head coach at Tech, from Shannon Hayes at the time at Texas Tech. I was sitting in biology class and my phone was just blowing up. And my dad texted me and was like, you need to answer that phone call. And I remember my biology teacher let me step out. But that's how I experienced select ball. I was a late bloomer in select ball. I hadn't been on and playing. I didn't really understand the recruiting process. I just went out there and played. I worked hard when I wasn't on the field. So I guess that paid off, not really knowing how the recruiting process went and when to do this and when to take SATs and PSATs and clearinghouse and all that information that most people who started earlier was already aware of.
Yeah, we do talk about those types of things. And same thing with our family is trying to get them prepared for what's coming up, and trying to understand, maybe a little bit of the recruiting process, even when they're at 12U,
Yes,
before they hit 13 and 14, because it's a lot of information. It's a little overwhelming, especially if you're not familiar with it and you don't know someone that's been through it.
Yes.
So did you go to any clinics and camps while you were in high school?
Nope. No, sir. I did not go to any clinics or camps. Again, because I was a late bloomer. I had been invited to so many, like my mailbox was, I just remember after it was one exposure tournament I went to, a smaller one. And I didn't know that the people that were watching behind were scouts. But I remember the week later, my mailbox was full and my dad was like, you don't have to be overwhelmed by this. You can select what you want to do and if you want to do it. And by the time I was coming out of school, we didn't have speed and agility coaches. We didn't have very many batting coaches around. Camps and clinics were invitation only a lot at that point. You could go, but it was more seen. It was more an invitation than it was by word of mouth or on social media. Find out UTA's having a camp this weekend, or you find out at a tournament that ULL is having a camp this weekend. Let's drive up. It wasn't like that for me. At least that's not how I experienced it. Mm-hmm. So I've never been to a college camp as a player. As a coach, I've been to many, I've held multiple, but as a player, I never, again, because I was a late bloomer in the select world, I didn't get to experience that.
No, that's similar to some of the other guests that we've had on. I would say that every single person that we've kind of done this interview process with, their experience going through that process has been completely different than anybody, they're all just completely different.
Yep.
And I think it's great for the girls to hear that, because just because say that you're a junior, like you're saying, you can be a late bloomer and you can still go to a community college and then step into a D1 or go to a tournament that maybe they're there to watch somebody else and they see you.
Absolutely.
There's no reason to give up on your dream. If you want to do it, that you can do it.
Absolutely. That is the biggest thing that I tell the kids that I train and coach now, is that it only takes one opportunity. It only takes one tournament. It only takes one practice. It only takes one person to see you and spread something, or one opportunity to be seen, or one at bat. Even if you had only had, out of the whole weekend, you'd only had 2 appearances at the plate. It only takes one of those appearances to be seen by the right person, because you're doing the right thing. And as a coach, I think that most people focus on how many opportunities they're getting versus, I'm sorry. Woo.
I know you're still getting over being sick. We appreciate you being on.
Holy. But I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Shoot. Hold on, I'm gonna grab some water.
Yep, go ahead.
Whoa. Okay, now that that's over.
Yep.
So
Yep, no worries.
It's pretty much just expounding on the opportunity that you get versus counting the ones you didn't get.
I think it's interesting, especially with you versus a lot of other, former players that we've had on, is that now you're coaching, travel softball. You're coaching a national travel softball team at the 18U level. So, from your perspective, what are some of the important things that you kind of work with your girls on? And maybe something that, like, what's the most important item to focus on for the recruiting process?
So right now I'm not coaching 18s anymore. I'm with 14s. But what I will say is that for both levels, when I was coaching 18s, what I would tell them for the recruiting process is taking care of all the things that they can, they have control of. Their test scores, community service hours, clearinghouse, just all the things that they can get done prior to them actually being seen by somebody. Because if you have a checklist and you already are aware of what the college coaches need, what the university needs from you, what your transcripts, taking PSATs, ACTs, all of those types of things, you always take care of the things that you have control over, that are going to be asked of you ahead of time. Once you get around that end of sophomore year, coming into your junior year, all that should be taken care of. And then, of course, non-scholastically, your attitude, your work ethic, your demeanor, how you carry yourself, your body language, being coachable, understanding, being a team player. So knowing that always being on the field does not make you the best player. Because in my time at Texas Tech, when I did have to sit out, I wouldn't be the coach that I am today if I didn't have time to sit down and observe all my teammates from the bench or from the dugout, and just being able to look and really understand the game. I think some of the smartest players are the ones that don't get to play all the time, if they take advantage of it with a good attitude, because then they're able to see, okay, well, this is why we should adjust in the box with a 3-2 count, or this is why we're told to have a prep step before the ball's coming. So just being able to control all the things that you can control about yourself, about your scholastics, about your attitude, about the effort you put in the classroom, on the field, respecting the people who are placed in a place of leadership above you, being a leader from within, just knowing who you are as a student athlete. I think that is the biggest thing that I tell all of my kids. If you can't identify who you are without this sport, then there's a problem, because at the end of the day, this sport is going to come to an end. And there has to be something that you were able to say that it taught you and that it made you better as a young lady, as a young man, you know, whatever it is that they may decide to be when they grow up, career-wise and path-wise.
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, that's really good stuff. And we do talk about a lot of that with our, especially, you know, when they're starting that recruiting process, 8, 13, 14, that they need to start, the girls need to start being aware that there are people that are watching them, and they have you on a list, or maybe they don't, but you don't want to limit your opportunities by the way that you're reacting to a situation in a negative manner. I know it's not always fair, but you got to be, you know, self-conscious about, you know, what you're doing on social media, the way that you're treating your teammates, your coaches, your opponents, even the umpires, the way you react to them when you strike out. Yeah, you might not like it, but, you know, making gestures or shaking your head, that's not a positive way or a constructive way to handle it.
I agree.
So one of the things that we do tell our girls too is that, you know, talent provides you opportunities, but your attitude and effort is what's going to keep you on the field.
Yes.
And, you know, it's really good to hear, you know, from another coach like yourself and a former player, the importance of that, because you've been in the dugout, you've played with it, and now you're on the other side of it, and now you're coaching it, and you see the relevance of it.
I think that when it comes to attitudes, a lot of it can come from what you're being told on the car rides home, what you're being told at home. And what I like to tell for any parents that are watching is that just make sure that you're always honest with your kids. It is absolutely your job and our job as coaches, we're a team, to understand that, yes, we are here to make sure that the athlete knows that there is nothing that they cannot do if they put in the work, if they work when nobody's looking, if their integrity level is through the roof. But a lot of the attitude problems that if we come across some is because the child feels like, or the athlete may feel sometimes that they're not getting the results that they believe they should have, but it's 9 times out of 10, it's going to fall back on you. Are you not getting the results because you're just in a rut, or are you not getting the results because you're not putting in the work that's going to present those results? And what I like to tell my kids and my parents at the beginning of every season is that 9 times out of 10, if I've had a conversation with your athlete, they understand why they're on the bench. They understand why they're in the lineup the way that they are. They understand why they're either playing the position they're playing, or why somebody's playing in front of them. And they're either going to make that conscious choice to be better, or they're going to pout about it. And having that attitude, having a complacent attitude, or a nobody could beat me attitude, it could really knock you down. Even being the greater athlete, we all have to understand that being humble is the biggest thing that's going to take us through this game. It's going to make us better players. It's going to make us better people. It's going to make us better business people and better just people in general. The attitude is absolutely something that it's a perspective thing. So you can look at something in a negative way, or you can flip it and say, I'm going to use this time to make myself better. I'm going to use this time to strengthen my weaknesses. I'm going to use this time to strengthen my strengths so that I can be immovable. What we have to understand, even me to this day, I am still a student of the game, because I may be a young coach, but I've been out of college for 6, 7 years now, and the game is changing. And there are people that are coming up under me that can teach me things as a leader, and because they're fresh out of the game. So just always being a student of the game, no matter what level you're at, no matter how good you are, no matter what the sports ranking says about you, none of that matters if you decide to stop being a student of the game and you have a not so hot attitude.
No, that's very well said. I totally, again, I agree with what you're saying, and entitlement is an issue. When players come into it, or families, with an expectation that they're going to receive something without working for it, there's generally issues, and those are and I don't know if it's your experience too, but I've been doing it, coaching now for, gosh, I hate to say it, 15 years. And I would say that I've never really had a real problem with a player. Not something that I could work through with a player, but typically it goes back to the family. There was something reinforcing that, but you can tell the players that are hearing things in the car on the way home. And yeah, so I do agree with what you're saying there.
Absolutely.
So what was the transition for you like, for going from high school to college? Was it the speed of the game? What did you notice, and was it an easy transition for you, or was it eye-opening, the experience?
The experience from high school to college for me was, it was a huge learning experience. Again, I was a late bloomer in the game, so a lot of what I did, I got by on raw talent, just being super fast, or being able to track down some of those balls, or being able to lay a bunt down and it's almost a double. A lot of that stuff afforded me, by the grace of God, my raw talent got me to places that some others may not have gotten the opportunity to, that were more mechanically sound than I was. So I was always grateful for any opportunity that I got, because I did not think that I was good enough to even be playing at the level that I was afforded to play at. So I'm always grateful for that. But the transition for me was very eye-opening, because I got to actually learn the game. And I got to be a fresh student, whereas you get some 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and they get to college, the only thing they're thinking about is, I gotta get on the field. I gotta win a starting position. I gotta find my way in the lineup. Whereas me, I knew I was fast. I knew I was raw. I had raw talent. I knew that my coach Freddie had taught me some things that I never learned, but I knew going into that was going to be a huge learning experience for me. I get to learn different things about slapping. I really get to break down different types of defenses, and just really kind of break down the game. So for me, I was excited to learn the game going into college. And I think that's what afforded me the position that I was afforded, because I didn't go in nervous about trying to win a starting spot. I went in willing to learn. And I think that's what placed me in the position that I was in, to be able to be a captain for 2 years and, earn a spot on the field and sit in the dugout and red shirt. Everything that happened to me in college, I was grateful for. Were there some trying times? Absolutely. Were there things that made me nervous? Absolutely. Was I nervous about playing time? Yes. But I was more excited about being able to just go there and really for once get the game broken down to me like it should have been. But again, I was a late bloomer, so I think people were just trying to get me on their team when I was in high school versus really break down the game. And I'm grateful for Coach Freddie for just taking his time with me, the little time that we did have before it was time for me to go to college.
Sometimes it just takes one coach to believe in you.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And then, so in high school, did you play generally outfield for high school?
I was a shortstop in high school.
Okay. And then they converted you for college?
I was an outfielder on my select team. I was a shortstop The very first time I played softball, I was a first baseman. Never believed it, but I was. I was a first baseman because I was the only one that could catch. I don't know how, but somehow that ball always fell into my huge mitt on my hand. And then the older I got, they started moving me to shortstop. I played shortstop for the longest time. And I think around my sophomore year in high school, I was converted to the outfield.
And then it looks like you did a lot of pinch running as well.
Oh yeah, I ran a lot. I ran so much. But I mean, they were going to run me as much as they could. They're going to use me as much as they could. I ran a lot, but I love to run. So even now, I'm playing a professional slow pitch right now, and I'm running. I run all day. You get subs a little bit more than you do in NCAA. USSSA rules are a little bit different than NCAA, but I'm still running a lot. Of course, I got to stretch way more now. I can't just get out there and start running anymore, but I still love to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure you're still pretty fast.
It's not as fast as it was, but I could definitely beat some of those older men out there.
So did you have an injury your sophomore year when you
Yes.
were redshirted? What was that like?
I messed up my shoulder really bad. And it kind of set me back a little bit. I remember my freshman year going into Texas Tech, I had a groin problem. And it's because, the weights and the workouts and pound for pound, I was lifting a lot. I was lifting very heavy. Just because, I loved it. I loved everything about the workouts, the morning weights, the competitiveness in the weight room before going to practice. So I kind of probably overworked myself, but I did have a shoulder problem my sophomore year that kind of shut me down, set me back a little bit, and stopped me from playing that sophomore year. I was devastated, but that was the year I would say that made me who I am today, because I legit had to sit out for a whole season. My coach let me be they got me like coaching gear. They let me coach with them on the side. So they made me feel like I was still a part of the team. I got to travel, but I learned the game. I learned the game that year. I really learned the game that year that I had to sit out. I really did. And I learned how to be a leader off the field. Most people always say that all leaders don't have to be starters. I never understood that until I had to be in that position. My teammates respected me more. They trusted me more because they knew what I was saying wasn't because I was trying to be the best on the field, but because I had their best interest at heart. Because there was nothing I could contribute but a voice, being encouraging, being honest with them, letting them know what I saw, and holding myself accountable, because I still had workouts and stuff. It wasn't much, but I still had to do my part because I was still on the team, even though I couldn't play.
That's a great message for any of the girls that are, either trying to get on the field or have an injury, that you can still be a part of the team and you can still contribute. Absolutely. And be an important part.
Absolutely.
So is there anything that you want to kind of touch on that we've already gone over? Anything that we kind of missed maybe from high school through travel and college?
I would say when you, as a player, I became a scout because I missed out on that process. So I wanted to be, because I knew I was going to coach, I needed to be enlightened on that process so that I could further help any athlete that came to me with that. What I would say is being realistic with yourself as an athlete, understanding where you are in the recruiting portal, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, knowing ahead of time. I would say write a list of 25 schools total. And all those schools need to consist of Division I, Division II, JUCO, NAIA, Division III. You need to have every type of division school in that list of 25. From there, you go and you do your research. If you know what you want to major in, if you have the slightest bit of idea of what you want to be, what you want to do, what you want to study, then you have to start eliminating schools based off of what they provide. Because I've seen a lot of athletes get their heart broken because they have these top 3 schools that they want to go to, and 2 of them don't even have the major they want. So now it's like, are you going to change your career plan to play softball? Or are you going to make sure that you can go play softball and still be what you desire? Even if that changes, there's a sense of responsibility that comes with choosing the right school for you. Every school is going to sell you a dream if they really want you. But you have to be able to decipher and understand, one, as a parent, I would say to make sure that you are aware that you instill in your child, yes, you can go to OU, you can go to UCLA, but also look at the Sam Houstons, look at the Blends, look at the UTAs, look at the UTDs, look at schools like that, because an opportunity is an opportunity. There's 1% of high school athletes that go to college, and it sounds like a small percent, but it's a lot of athletes. If you look at it, all the athletes we get to watch play on Saturdays and Fridays and weekends and things like that, but not every athlete is able to go pursue their dream. Either one, because they didn't really take the recruiting process seriously, or 2, because they weren't realistic with themselves. And I would hate for any athlete to miss out on the opportunity because they only gave themselves opportunities at higher schools or schools that weren't even going to benefit them once they got there. So my biggest thing is placement, understanding where you are in your class, understanding what your grades look like. Not every student is a straight A student. You got to know the difference between Division II and Division III. Division III, you're going to get scholarship money academically. So if you know your strong suit isn't academics, then you need to go look somewhere else. And that's just honestly speaking. You got a big D3 school, but your SATs aren't high enough, then you need to keep taking it until you get it where you need it to be. Understanding that if you want to go into nursing or a veterinarian, that all of that, those types of things, they require a lot of work. I've had 2 veterinarian kids that want to be veterinarians, and they go to school and they see that the workload is way more than they could ever handle and go to practice. So my thing is just knowing and understanding that entire process, knowing the difference between grants and loans, filling out your financial aid in time. All of those things are going to play a huge part when you go into college. For the parents as well, parents, I would definitely say, please educate yourself on your child's recruiting process, because the more you know, they're leaning on you, whether they want to admit it or not. When they have those days at college where they don't really want to call anybody, you're going to be the one to pull them out, to let them know, this is what it is. If you're not seeing it, just please educate yourself on that process. And athletes I want to say around 9th grade, you can start figuring out top 25 schools. By 10th grade, that should be lowered to at least 15 to 10. And then your junior year, you should have between 5 to 8 schools, realistic schools, which SAT scores and things of that already sorted out, and already kind of having an idea of the path you want to go on.
That's great. Yep, that's good to hear. And then the next thing that I wanted to make sure that we touched on before we opened it up for questions was that, you're also unique in a lot of ways, that you're very involved. You're coaching travel ball after, as a post player. You're playing professional slow pitch softball at a competitive level. And you're also involved with and you can kind of explain it to me, the businesses that you're involved with, the lab, and then also the Faith at the Plate. Yes.
So Faith at the Plate is actually my nonprofit, and it's something that I created that's what helped me make a smooth transition from being an athlete to the business world. I was trying to figure out what it was that I could do that was going to help me make that transition without feeling like I had to be on the field. Because that process and that transition for a lot of athletes after being an athlete your entire life, it is not easy. I remember my first year coming home from college, I would wake up at 5 a.m. and freak out thinking I missed workouts. And I'm like, oh my God, you're back home, you're fine. There's no 5 a.m. workouts. You can turn all those alarms off. You got to get up.
Those are internal alarms. Yep.
Like even to this day, I roll over at 5 a.m. and I'm like, girl, go back to bed unless you just, you have to get up and catch a flight or something like that. But Faith at the Plate, which is something that I made for young ladies and women in athletics to be able to come together and all talk about their experiences, either as a current athlete, a former athlete, or an athlete in transition, because I realized that a lot of athletes don't talk about how hard that transition is for them. And that can really take a toll mentally on someone when you're used to having something a part of your life forever and then having to learn how to do life without it. That is a transition that's not easy for anyone, not even just in athletics, but even in the business world. If you're used to doing something for so long and then, after something like COVID comes in and changes your whole life, we don't necessarily have places or stages where people can come and talk about those types of things and feel safe and hear that you're not the only one going through this type of thing. You're not the only one having to make a transition. There's more people that have dealt with what you're going through. And sometimes you never know, somebody might have the answer you need. And I know as an athlete, I had my first birthday party at 25 after the age of 12, because I was always on the road for my birthday. And for me, that was a huge thing. On my 25th birthday, my mom threw me a party and I cried like a baby because that was something big for me. But I wouldn't have known that that was a big deal if I didn't invite those young ladies and women in. And I do have a male side of Faith at the Plate too, that is for men. And then I have, the unisex classes as well. But Faith at the Plate is kind of where I run my lessons based out of and things of that sort. But that was just a platform. I want to say I was selfish when I did that. It was for me. It wasn't for other people first. It was for me to make that transition. But I opened it up as much as I saw that it helped me. Just kind of writing down my ideas and my thoughts. And once that opened up, I just started inviting other people in. And now that's what it is for everyone.
Yeah, that's really cool. I really do strongly believe, and we try to incorporate it in our organization every year, just mental health awareness.
Yes.
A lot of the same points that you're talking about, that the girls don't need to feel like they're alone and that they can, either reach out to a coach or be there with a player, just having that safe place that, it's acceptable. There is a stigma involved and it's very unfortunate.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And then, with that being said too, we had a player, and it was the first time I really talked to, it was a player that left our program probably a year or two before I started coaching 18U. So I never had the opportunity to coach her. She's a coach here in the area at a high school. And when I was talking to her, she just kind of shared, similar to what you're talking about, that after she went to college and played, she had this really difficult time transitioning. Like the softball wasn't there, and she ended up going into kind of competitive working out, bodybuilding. Is kind of where she focused that now, and she shares a lot of that, activity on our Facebook page and so on. But I didn't even really think about it, like how you would just completely miss it. So I played basketball in college, and I loved when my kids were little and they played basketball to coach them in basketball, because it felt like you're still a part of that competitiveness,
Yep.
You get the butterflies, you get excited for them. Yep.
Yep.
So I totally get it. And it's definitely something that's important to talk about and not cast aside. So it's cool that you're doing that.
Yes, I enjoy it a lot. And it's not just for um, softball players. I've opened it to my football players that I train, my basketball players, because men aren't allowed to be vulnerable. Men athletes, they get talked about. They, oh, you're being soft. Oh, just go get a job somewhere. So we're all human. We all deal with our emotions. We all have things that we love. And when it's taken away from us in the blink of an eye, you have to learn, or it's almost like you have to retrain your body and your mind how to operate all over again at the age of 30, at the age of 27, at the age of 18. Whenever it's taken away from you, it doesn't really matter the age. That's just something that, just like my body, how I'm used to waking up and going to work out. I had to get a dog so I could wake up at 5 and go walk him. So that would fulfill that for me. And now I'm out of that 5 a.m. thing. I'm like, girl, you sleep in for as long as you need to, which is what I'm gonna do this weekend. I'm gonna get some sleep. But I mean, I believe that every athlete deserves the opportunity to be honest about their experience with that comes with the transition. Because if you have a healthy transition, somebody needs to hear that is that's possible. And you just never know how many people you can truly help. Even your not so good transitions, but you end up finding your way. People need to hear that too. Like, it's not going to be smooth, but there is something out there for you that will stimulate you and give you that same adrenaline rush as what you used to love. Just like you said, being able to coach your kids, like, that's freaking awesome. I'm sure you want to take the ball and be like, look, let me show you how to, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well, we'll open it up for questions. I know we're getting down here to the last 10, 15 minutes. So I know I usually have a quiet group, but we'll see. I got some go-tos here that I'll ask them if they have questions, kind of prompt them.
Okay.
But we'll go ahead and leave it up to everybody here. Anyone have any questions?
I have a question. This is Rick. First off, thank you so much for taking the time and being a part of our group and talking to the young athletes. A lot of things I can resonate with, just how we can prep our kids. So thank you so much for explaining that to the kids and to the parents. My first question is, how did it feel, or did you pick going to Texas Tech because it's 15, 20 minutes from your house, or did you want to go different colleges and you just fell in love with Texas Tech?
So I had a couple of different offers. I chose Texas Tech because it is in Texas, but it's 9 hours away from me. It was actually the furthest trip, which is crazy. But I chose Texas Tech because they'd never seen me play, and they still wanted me to come. So the tournament that they were supposed to come watch me play, I had an abscess that had gotten into my gums, and I had to be rushed to the urgent care. And I remember bawling because I was telling my dad, like, this is the second time they were actually supposed to see me play after my official visit. And I hadn't got an opportunity. They only heard of me by word of mouth. They're not going to want me. They're going to take my scholarship. And when I got there, they were all there. They heard about what happened to me. And they were like, they said that my energy and my attitude and what I gave off to them was enough for them to keep their word. And so character is a big thing for me, because that's what blessed me to continue to be able to have the opportunity that I was afforded. Whereas all the other schools, they saw me play, they were able to come watch me. But Texas Tech, they kept their word because they thought that as a person, there was something about me that they trusted even though they'd never seen me play. And that's why I preach to my kids over and over and over and over again. It does not matter how you play all the time. Sometimes it's how you get back up. It's how you respond to certain things. It's how you run to the dugout after you make an error. It's how you hustle to the dugout after you strike out. It's how you get back up after you miss a play. They're watching those types of things because now you're coachable. Now you're dependable. Now I know that if something goes wrong, I can come to you to be a leader, to lead this team. If we're down 2-0 against LSU in a championship game, I know that there's somebody in that dugout at the bottom of the 7th inning that's going to pick us up with their words or with their energy or with their vibe. And so I always teach that and preach that to my kids, that skill is not the only thing that can get you a scholarship. Now, it'll take you there, but being able to hold yourself as an individual and stay true to who you are, regardless of what life throws at you. The day you may have had at school, having an abscess that goes through your gums that stops you from playing an entire tournament. You just never know how a positive attitude can affect your future.
Man, that's very powerful. That's awesome. All right, I have a follow-on question.
Okay.
What would you tell your 10-year-old self, knowing everything and how everything played out? What words of affirmation would you give yourself back, 10 when you're at 10 years old?
I would tell my 10-year-old self to do it scared, and not try and make sure that it's all perfect before you go. Just do it, because all the scrapes and bumps and bruises is completely worth it. Failures is worth it, because not having to know what's around the corner before you just run around the corner it's the journey. It's getting around the corner that's really worth it. It's not seeing what's around that corner. So I would definitely tell myself, just do it. Doesn't matter if you're scared, doesn't matter if you're tired, just do it. Whatever you want to do, whatever you set your mind to. And my dad taught me that. He was the one that told me, you can do whatever you want to do. You can pick whatever sport you want to pick. You don't have to do that if you don't want to do it, but I want you to try it. At least give me 2 weeks. He would always give us 2 weeks to 3 weeks to try it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. And I did not like softball. My first practice, I broke somebody's nose because I threw the ball bad. And I'm like, I'm going to run track. I'm never coming back to these dirt fields with the grass. It's half dirt, half grass. It doesn't make sense to me. But I just did it. I kept doing it. And now I'm able to help another generation.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad your dad pushed you, because my daughter, if she had the choice, she would only play soccer, and I made her play basketball and baseball, and she refused. And now those softball and basketball are her 2 favorite sports.
Absolutely. That's the best way to.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time, and I guess I'll open.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I'm going to you, Chris.
I know. I was waiting to see if anybody else was going to chime in. I didn't want to jump on. So first off, I apologize if this has already been asked. I did have to join a little bit late. But I would echo what Ricky said. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and, tell your story and be willing to answer our questions. So much of what you said really resonated with me, especially those car rides, and not always because I would build up my daughter and, tell her how great she was, but a lot of times she actually got the other side of things, the hypercritical dad. And we had another Chalk Talk a year or so ago where somebody else echoed that exact same thing that you said, and just very powerful and a good reminder to really be conscious of those things and be honest with them, but also do it at the right time, and maybe right after a game. It's not always the best time to do that. My question though for you, so looking back in everything you've done, is there one or two things that maybe you wish you had known, or you wish you had been better prepared for, like maybe the transition from high school to being a college athlete or anything looking back that you're like, man, I could have been better prepared had I done this, or I wish I had known that, looking back on it now?
Absolutely. I wish I would have known more about the recruiting process and everything that came with that. Like, I went to Texas Tech, and this is me just being transparent. I did not have my clearinghouse filled out, and I had no idea what a clearinghouse was. An NCAA clearinghouse. I had everything together. I had my transcripts. I had moved in. I had my SAT scores. Everything was ready. I had my acceptance letter, and I did not have my clearinghouse. I had to come back home for 3 weeks until that got done, and then I got to go back. So I wish I would have educated myself more, even though I was a late bloomer. I think I was just so excited about the opportunity, and so were my parents, that we didn't make sure, or I didn't make sure that every single step was completed. And again, I said it earlier, that's why I became a scout, so that I could be there for someone who was like me, who didn't understand or didn't know that there were other things that needed, other small but huge things that would make a big difference once you actually touch down the campus. I couldn't practice for a week. I couldn't get any of my shots that I needed to get until my clearinghouse was completed. And I had nobody to tell me that. But I wish that was the one thing that I would have done a little bit better, was understand that part of it, the paperwork, and the knowing what financial aid was before I got to school. Not my parents understanding difference between financial aid and Parent Plus loans and things of that sort. And I had 2 older brothers that were already in school, but they weren't late bloomers in what they wanted to do. Like, my second oldest brother was playing football all his life. He knew he was going to college in football, so they had people to take care of that. And unfortunately, male athletes get better taken care of than females do. So there were things that they didn't even have to worry about filling out. But I just wish that I was a little bit more educated on that process earlier, so that it would have been smoother. But I'm glad that I did experience it, because again, now I get to tell my athletes, make sure you fill out your NCAA clearinghouse. And they're like, what is that? I'm like, just do it. Don't ask, just do it. But yes, that is one thing that I wish I would have kind of taken care of sooner.
That's awesome. Thank you, especially as both a dad and a coach to a group of 16-year-old girls who are really coming into that time. The recruiting process can be very overwhelming, and making sure that you check all those boxes and that you have all your ducks in a row is definitely a lot to manage. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do we have any other questions out there? Not a bad question.
I have a question. My name's Stephanie. It's nice to meet you. Thank you so much, like everybody else has said, for taking this time out with us. I can tell you after this, I'm definitely a fan. I have loved listening to you. So I'm sure everybody on tonight, you have a whole bunch of new friends. One of my questions, it's a 2-part. One, out of your high school or college experience, what would you say is one of your favorite highlights, whether it be like an amazing play, a big team win, and then what would be maybe one of, I guess, I don't want to say worse, because it could have been a bad situation, but you learned something from it that ended up being bad or good. I mean,
That's a really good question.
that right?
That's a great question. So I would say my favorite memory was there was a girl on the softball team who everybody loved her. Everybody, like, she was just the top person to go to and all things of that sort. So when it came down to nominations for homecoming, the team had to select who they thought was going to be, who was going to represent softball well. And I cast my vote and did all of that. And the next day of the morning, we're wearing her name on our t-shirts and things of that sort. And the entire team selected me. And I was not expecting that. And I'm like, I get selected for homecoming. And that year I actually ended up winning homecoming queen. And I did not expect that. It was never in my wildest dreams, anything like that. But again, that had come from me just not trying to do more than what was asked of me. When I mean that is, I was a good teammate. I was a good friend. I helped on the field. I ran on and off the field. I just prided myself on being a good teammate and an athlete at the same time, not just trying to be the star athlete. And I ended up being the only person that did go to a big D1 school out of that class and out of the 4 classes before me. But that had nothing to do with that. And again, I pride that Scott asked me earlier, who is the people that I admire the most? That comes from watching my older brothers be humble in everything that they've done and just kind of making sure that they're still good people, even if they were the best in the room. They led by example and not with words. And that's what I always have tried to do. And that really just touched my heart to know that people thought highly of me in that way, because I was not expecting that. I was sitting in class and I'm like, yeah, she's about to win. And then I heard my name and I'm like, what? Me? I was kind of like, no, I don't want to do it. I got to put on heels and a dress. But I ended up winning that. So that was probably one of the best things that a teammate or a team could ever do. And those are the things that I remember the most, are my teammates, not the plays. But I would say one of the worst things that probably ever happened was, and this is in high school, right?
Sorry, had to unmute. High school or college. So, or both, like if maybe an experience from both, that would be awesome.
Okay. One of the, I would say not a bad experience, like you said, but just a rough experience for me was when I actually stayed at Texas Tech for 5 years to complete. I finished with 3 degrees, so I stayed my 5th year to finish that last degree, and I was done with softball. So I had a whole entire year that I was not a student athlete. My brother had gone to the NFL. My friends were either completed their degree or they moved on to something else. I'm sorry, my dog is crying because I will not let him in here right now. Hold on, give me 1 second.
You're good.
Sit down. Don't be a brat. Okay, I'm sorry. That was bothering me.
What was your dog's name?
His name's Buddy. He looks
Buddy?
like Spanky off of Little Rascals. And he's just like, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm making a lot of noise. And I'm like, just don't be a brat right now. We can talk about it later. But the probably that was probably one of the worst experiences for me, because I'm so used to either being a part of a team or being surrounded by somebody that I knew. So the guy that I was dating at the time, he was there with me for 5 years. He had gone to the NFL. My brother was gone to the NFL. So I just felt alone in that time. For the first time that I had been gone from home, I was just a regular student. And that was so weird to me, because I always had practices and things, but this time I was just going to school for a semester, and that was probably the worst moment for me, but it made me exactly who I am, exactly like the year that I had to sit out and watch from the bench. It made me a better coach. But that year where I had to I think that was helping me start to make that transition. Like, okay, this is what you want to do. Softball isn't a part of this, but you have to use all that you learned through workouts and through adversity during practice and adversity during the games. Use all of that and take that into finishing this last semester. Like, you're going to feel lonely, but you're not. It's worth something later on down the line. So I would say those were probably my greatest and my weakest moments in high school and college, but they both are things that have made me a better person today.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, final call. Any other questions? I know it's getting late.
I got one last one. Oh, it's a short one. Hopefully, maybe. Who would you say is your biggest hero, or someone that you absolutely look up to, past or present?
Have to be I don't know if you guys know him, but I love TD Jakes. He's one of the world-renowned bishops right now. It's only because he kind of reminds me of myself and his path and being they call him the world's pastor, but he's very transparent every time he gets on the pulpit. It's not just about what he has now, but he always tells how he got there. And the type of leader that he is something that I'd like to follow. He tells the stories of his life that got him to where he is, and it'll help you on a really bad day. It'll help you when you just feel like, oh, I don't feel like it anymore. You just never know how close you are to something unless you keep going. And I will say that he has truly helped me through a lot. Just his books, his quotes, his motivational speeches, his sermons. I would say he's one of my heroes. I said it earlier, my oldest brother, and it's only because he reminds me of him a lot, but definitely have to say, celebrity wise, if I had to name a celebrity, I don't really look up to too many celebrities, but TD Jakes is definitely that guy because of the platform that he's on. He's so transparent, and it's very hard to find a huge leader like him that is okay with showing everything about himself and people still respect him. That's a hard thing to do, to not be judged or to not care who's going to judge you for what you've been through or what you had to do to get to where you're going and still be at the level that you're at. So I'd have to say he's one of my biggest heroes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again for sharing. The vibe that you put out is a great one, and I just see a lot of things that you're saying and it resonates with me, and I appreciate everything you're doing. Definitely got a follow from me. So my wife and my daughter are here. My wife and daughter, and they're just like, she's awesome. So you're definitely up there in the top 5. So
don't hesitate to reach out. If ever you guys need anything, don't hesitate. Just reach out and I'll be right there.
You're awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Camaury. I just want to, we really appreciate, you spending your time with us tonight, and you're by far, one of our best speakers. I really, again, it resonates with us, especially the coaches. You're right on point, and we really appreciate you sharing, your journey, with the kids. So with that being said, hopefully I'll run into you at the NFCA conference in San Antonio. I'll be there, and maybe we can connect there and talk some more.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I hope I said something that helped somebody tonight. And please, again, do not hesitate to reach out. Whatever you may need, my Facebook is where it is. If you want my personal number, just contact me and we'll always be able to talk.
Sounds great. All right, well, have a nice night. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.